Good morning, trade professionals. We're back with another Simply Trade news roundup. Very exciting. We have Lalo and Andy in the studio. Obviously, it's not a physical studio, it's a virtual studio, but very exciting. Thank you guys for coming on once again.
Well, if I am in a virtual studio, why do I feel so tired? I'm like, if this is virtual me ought to be full of energy. Just so you know, folks, Anik is so great with this, but she is over in Germany. So we are, shall we say, Europe and U.S. spread on this every time we do it. Anyway.
I guess that's where the different opinions comes in, huh, Andy? Right?
I hope so. Different perspectives. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so we're going straight into our first article. It says deadline looms for U.S.-EU steel aluminum deal. So there's a few questions for me because there's a few words and I wouldn't say words, contracts or whatever that are out of my region. I'm not really familiar with. So I do have a question behind this entire process and what is behind this deal. What kind of positives are coming out of there for the United States?
Well, the first thing, let me just jump in on this is that, all right, let's go back a little bit here is that, first off, I am really glad to see, because I have been pretty critical of the current administration that never seems, they talk a good game with their different negotiations on things or claim to be, but there appears to be an actual trade deal working now. Whether or not I agree with the details of it, that's a different story. At least there's something happening here. And specifically talking about steel and aluminum. If you think back, under the Trump administration, they put in what's called the 232 tariffs that were adding additional tariffs to steel and aluminum products coming out of Europe, actually probably out of most countries around the world. And with that, there sparked a bit of a trade war with that. There were a tariff war, if you will. And what this particular agreement is to come to a trade agreement that would eliminate the 232 tariffs for steel and aluminum for European goods coming into the U.S. Conversely, it's supposed to open up markets for U.S. goods. Now, before we go too far along, one of the main reasons why the Trump administration looked at putting in those tariffs, the 232 tariffs that is, was, if you think back, there was the longest trade dispute between Europe and the U.S. regarding specifically Airbus and Boeing manufactured aircraft. On the positive is that it appears that there is an agreement that is in the works here to come out with a trade agreement that would eliminate steel and aluminum tariffs.
It says in there, in addition, the U.S. has been pressing for its exports to be excluded from the EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM. I don't know how they say it, CBAM. What is that? That's what you're talking about specifically, right?
Yeah, and Anik, that is, if you recall what we said before, as I said, Europe was implementing this, and it took effect October 1st. So here's what's happening. There is some kind of a board of people, and chances are, I'll back off of that because that'll be just pure opinion on my part. There is a group of people of some.
Go ahead with that opinion. I already know what it is now that you said it.
Well, there's a group of people that arbitrarily come up with, and now they'll try and justify it with whatever statistical data, but they're going to levy. Basically, it's a non-elected group of people. It's a bureaucracy that is levying basically a tax, an added fee, a carbon fee for goods that they deemed as not being manufactured in a green enough manner. So what that does is it inflates the cost of those goods. But here's what's key about it. This is where I come back to saying it has nothing to do with true producing of green. What it all has to do in this article, it says, and the Europeans were saying this, is that added fee or carbon tax, if you will, is to protect the European industries.
Hi everyone, are you loving our podcast? Do you feel like watching instead of just listening to our episodes? We have started to share our podcast videos on our trade community, www.crowd.trade, where you can view the complete show, comment, and carry conversations with your peers. We have built a trade community around our training courses and different resources for you to collaborate and gain the knowledge you are looking for. Head over to crowd.trade and register for your free account. Let's start trading.
And it appears that the Europe is going to go ahead and tax U.S. goods based on whatever formula. That's the other thing. How do they come up with this? You don't see that. You still don't see it. And it's just a group of people. Well, you know what? It took effect October 1st. So here we go. And so now they can be, charging all that. So Europeans, you're going to pay more money, arbitrarily inflated fees for imported goods, all because of green energy. But here we go. So there's some good and there's some bad in this, but it is playing out exactly like what we have talked about before, is you got an arbitrary group or a bureaucratic group, that arbitrarily says, oh, well, you know what? You don't manufacture that item with green enough energy. So therefore you're going to have to, we're going to charge you an extra fee.
Maybe I'll find someone here in the European market that can jump on and give us their input.
I'll just say this, one other thing. This is just another good example that, again, in my personal opinion, U.S. goods are not treated fairly abroad.
We'll see. I think there will be more coming from it, and maybe to get more information, we need like a certain specialist. Anyways, moving on to the second article. We already talked about this. It's China rebukes EU after formal launch of EV Subsidy Probe. Is that how you would say it? We did talk about this before, but I guess now China is like, you guys didn't give us a notice, or you guys just didn't communicate this better with us. So where are my questions? So the question is, first of all, China's not happy. Do you think China is in the right here of not being happy and saying, we didn't have much communication for this to happen, because now obviously the investigation is ongoing and China is trying to protect their businesses? But do you think they're in the right? Obviously, yes, I understand that I think any country would want to protect their businesses because it's the money that the country's making in a way. But what do you think? Is China being right? Or
I don't think it's so much that the country is trying to protect their business so much as they just want to play fair. Basically, I guess just think of it this way. When my son was in Scouts, we always had these really fun races that we used to have. The Scout had to build a Pinewood Derby car. So that we call the Pinewood Derby
remember
cars.
Doing that. Yes,
so I remember that, right?
Yes.
I mean, God, those were like the best times of my life there. So the Scout builds this Pinewood Derby. It's to the point where it is beyond wicked competitive. I mean, no joke. I mean, I'm not the kids that do the best are the kids who have their parents help them build those cars, which is fine. They can help and, etc. But there are some that are beyond being helped, meaning we're talking about like really helping, like probably the kid didn't even have any input in it other than what color should I paint the car? Probably that's about it, and so that's the same thing. Other parents are probably saying, wait a minute, how could they win when it's so obvious that that car was built almost professionally, and that's almost a joke, but compared to an 8-year-old building this car. So same thing here. All they're doing is not necessarily whatever China says and whatever anybody says. It's not necessarily protectionism. It's more like, let's level the playing field here. Okay. Don't have your daddy or mommy over here help you build that car because I don't have my mom and dad helping me build that car. We're building it in the free enterprise system the way you should, So anyway, that's the way I'm looking at it. Okay. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to put it in perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair deal. And actually, I do believe that's what any country would do or should do, because you obviously want a fair game. But just knowing it's China, do you think that it is a fair game really for them? Or do you think they maybe are doing something that could, what's the opposite of benefit?
Well, it's costly, versus
that could cost other countries. Exactly. Going on to wrap this whole thing off, we have another article, and it kind of talks about 2024. Y'all, we're almost at the end of 2023, so it's happening. We're going into 2024. And they say prepare for stalling and divergent global growth in 2024. UN trade arm warns. Now they're saying that they gave us a number of the growth, which was the global economic growth will rise slightly from 2.4% in 2023 to 2.5% in 2024, which is very little. And they even called that optimistic because our economy, which is kind of funny that they're saying that, because the economy currently is thriving with all these women on top, as we're talking about Taylor Swift and Beyonce and all those kind of women that are leading our economy right now. So they're doing, and you know what? I actually wonder what would happen if those women were not currently doing that, because they already said that Taylor Swift would give a lot to the economy and has done a lot, which is true. We've seen it. We have seen these people migrate and stuff. So what would we have done without them, right? And I actually will have to still talk to Lalo about that, but I have something. Well, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so I think we should do something with women. So I still have to talk to Lalo about that, but hopefully we can make it work. So we have something for us women this month in the news section of the podcast. But anyways, I want to talk to you about this article and what do you guys think will happen in 2024? What do you think is about the recession? Will it happen? What are your standpoints on it? And, just share what you think on this one.
Well, I will say, all right, so putting things again in perspective, we're talking about the UN Trade Office, basically, is looking at the volumes of trade, and it's the gross domestic product of the world, of the globe. So everybody's economy as it rolls up. So it's saying 2.4% is what the growth rate was in 2023. And guess what? It's going to grow to 2.5% in 2024, 0.1%. This comes back to another thing where people, again, we talk about different trade things and all that goes on. I'm just going to make a comment here. When the U.S. economy is strong, the world economy is strong. Lots of countries benefit from it. You guys can look at it and go back in history and look at that. But generally speaking, when the U.S. economy has been strong, other countries' economies are strong as well. The U.S. economy is not strong, regardless of whatever you're saying on that. They're saying, well, is the U.S., are we going to qualify or identify as having a recession in the U.S.? Because of the pandemic, there's been such devastating damage done due to the pandemic scenario there that the U.S. still keeps crawling out of an overall hole of that. Saying that, though, I will tell you that our economy is pretty anemic. It's, don't look at what, the White House and others are spending it. It's just like, look at what's happening. Inflation, I mean, groceries are up 18%. Fuel prices are higher. You've got a scenario here where loss or theft in the U.S. from retail stores to just general businesses is astronomical because crime rates have gone up all over creation. All of that hurts your economy. We've lost jobs. We have strikes going on. We've talked about this before, where the longshoremen on the West Coast and the unions are striking on that. All of that is in the U.S. You've got, the longshoremen, you had the Teamsters, you had the airline pilots, you've got the Writers Guild, you've got the, I said the auto workers, the railroads unions are coming into play. There's other unions that are looking at that. All of that is disrupting supply chains. It's hurting the economy, and eventually it'll calm down. But what that means is the U.S., the outlook does not look as strong as it could be or should be. Europe, same thing. Like even in Germany in 2023, there's been a recession. Your economy in Germany actually shrunk by 0.6%. So
and you hear people talking about it. You do.
Yeah. So here's the thing. And now they're claiming that, oh no, but it's going to come back, like a 1 or 2% growth increase. Well, that's like a 3% swing for Germany. The point being is that as we're looking at everything is anemic. Debt is a high thing, high cost to the economy. And that's happening not only in the U.S., but lots of other countries and governments have a heavy debt. Well, interest rates have gone up because of inflation. Inflation itself is like the cost of goods is going up. All of these things is kind of like, I think, Lalo, I think you put it as the perfect storm as certain things are coming together. It's you better batten down the hatches, pay off your debt, don't go into further debt, and be ready to ride out a storm that's going to be very difficult.
Do you think we have gotten through the worst of it, or do you think the worst is yet to come?
I think the worst is yet to come because there's still more trade policies. Go ahead, Lalo.
I think that's what the UN report pretty much is saying, that 2024 is going to be a little harsh, and I think it's true. To an extent, of course, let's hope things may change. I mean, I don't know. And it's just like Andy said, I mean, here in the U.S., when things go bad here in the U.S., the rest of the world tends to suffer the consequence. There was a saying back in the day, I don't know, back in the 80s, 90s. I'm sure people still say it, but they used to say, when the U.S. sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. Basically, it's true. If we're doing bad, other countries may be in a recession. We're not in a recession, but other countries may be in a recession only because we're not as healthy, economically. So I guess just the way politics are going right now, and trade, and it's not bad. Nothing is really like horrible. It's just needs to be fixed a little, so.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And actually, Global Training Center has been working to put a little webinar together, free webinar, which we want to make like a review of the year with our new instructor, kind of reviewing what has happened and, what's kind of to come, which will be super interesting. She's amazing, Renee. And so I'm going to do a little marketing for it. It's hopefully coming in December, fingers crossed. But that could be very exciting, especially for people that want to get into it and kind of want to know why things are happening the way they are and where they're going to go. Anyways, that is a wrap up. And for the last thing, I have two things I could choose from, and I'm just going to choose from. Okay. So could you tell me the top 10 logistics companies by revenue? I'm not the 10, just the first 3.
Top 10 or top 3 logistics companies.
Kuehne+Nagel.
Which one?
I would.
Kuehne+Nagel. No.
K&N.
K&N.
Kuehne+Nagel. Yeah.
It's in there. It's in there, but it's not. It's okay. It's third. It's actually fourth. It's fourth.
Oh,
okay. All right. How about UPS and FedEx?
UPS is first.
And DHL?
Deutsche Post is second.
Oh, wow. And is
FedEx is third.
Yeah.
Wow. Go figure.
I know. I found that cool. I love DHL. They're so quick. Also, UPS, same thing. And, I heard they pay their drivers really good. That's what I heard. But anyways, okay. Well, wrapping this up, thank you guys for listening. And I hope you guys have a great October. Woo, it's October. It's so exciting. Okay.
Oktoberfest. There you go.
Mm-hmm. I got invited and I declined. So, okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.